In this video, we're going to talk about the periodic trends. Those are the trends in the properties of the elements on the periodic table. Atoms have different properties, and we're going to learn why. We're just going to start off with the definitions. So the first one is the atomic radius. Hopefully you guys remember from math and geometry that the radius is the distance from the center of a circle or a sphere to its outer edge. So if we think of that atom cloud as kind of a spherical shape, it's just the distance from the center of the atom to the outside. So just that radius of the atom. There are actually a couple of different ways of figuring out the radius, so whenever you have to look up information for that, there can be different numbers. They're usually pretty close, but what they typically do is put two atoms together and measure the distance between them. And you can see that if you look right here, they've got two atoms next to each other and they just measure from nucleus to nucleus and cut that in half. Or they can measure from the nucleus, the center of the nucleus, to the outside of the atom. And it's so they're not always going to be exactly the same, but I think that one's pretty straightforward. Okay? And the next property is ionization energy. So we've talked about the fact that an ion is when you have an atom that has a charge because it has gained or lost electrons. So the definition of ionization energy is the amount of energy it takes to remove one electron from an atom. There are different ones, but the only one that we are concerned about in here is the energy to take off that one electron. And so basically, if you're removing an electron, think about what happens to the charge. You're taking away a negative electron, so it has fewer electrons than protons. It's going to make a positive ion. So this element, whatever it is, if it's fluorine or chlorine, whatever this element is, if we remove an electron from it, it's going to form a positive ion. And if you think about it, the more difficult that it is to pull that electron off of that atom, the more energy that it takes. The next one is electronegativity, and that is the ability of an atom in a compound to attract electrons to itself. Now, the most important part of that definition is that it has to be in a compound, because what it's doing is one atom's attracting the electrons of the atom next to it. So if they're not in compounds, they can't have electronegativities. And what happens is the element in a compound that has the higher electronegativity will attract more of the electrons from the other atom to it. And so they form what are called like a partial negative charge. The electrons don't go there and stay, but they spend more time around it. So that atom will end up with kind of a higher, a little more negative charge. It's not a full negative charge, but a partial negative charge. And we'll look at that a little bit more in class after you've done your guided inquiry. See you in class.